Okay, so today I'm gonna read Buddhadhamma by Somdet Praputokosa Ajahn P.A. Payutto. There are a few passages in this section of right mindfulness that kind of emphasis on the purposes and roles of mindfulness in our practice and in our daily life. And although the book has the kind of academic flavor to it, Somdet Payutto, he kind of being like scholar monks in the I think to me he's kind of like the most famous scholar monks in Thailand. But yeah, although it has an academic flavor, but I encourage people to not focusing on, try to figure out the clear cut of like the boundary of different qualities. Just want to, just encourage people to just look what is a practical advices that you can take away from the reading. Developing the full foundations of mindfulness, a life free from suffering. From one perspective, the life of human being can be described as a struggle for survival, stability, and safety. From another perspective, however, each person searches for happiness and satisfaction. This not only prosperous people who seek happiness, those people who struggle with all their might for survival do so as well. No matter if one looks at a long period of time, say of developing a career or engaging in various activities, or if one looks at brief intervals of time, say of momentary movements and actions, the search for happiness is always an inherent part of life. This is true even if one is occasionally faced by challenging matters of conscience or ethics. In truth, the search for happiness over a long period of time extends from the search for happiness in each moment. In one's own daily life, one must take an interest in finding a way to experience happiness in every moment. One's search for happiness will thus be successful. If one is unable to experience happiness in every moment, the possibility of happiness in the long run will remain a vague hope. But if one is able to experience happiness in each moment, one which will immediately become fulfilled, and when external surrounding conditions are favorable, one's happiness will only increase. The ordinary human process of seeking happiness, which is evident even in short-term or momentary periods of time, is such desire arises or is made to arise, and the person then acts in various ways to satisfy that desire. When there's gratification, the desire abates and the person experiences happiness. The more the desire is stimulated, the more intense is the gratification and pleasure. Happiness is thus the gratification of desire. We can then ask the question, what is desire? The question need not be answered directly. When it's clear is that when desire arises, there are two significant manifestations. First is a sense of lack and deficiency, an absence of a desired object, either a true lack or one that is created in the mind. Second is a feeling of agitation or suffering, because one is hindered or one is pulled away from how things exist in that moment. One is unable to be at peace, and one must struggle to find a way to still the agitation. Only when desire is gratified does one feel back to normal, and thus the agitation abate or stop. During this period of time, one experiences happiness, but if the desire is not gratified, one experiences a sense of loss, agitation, oppression, and affliction. Suffering, in fact, begins with the onset of desire, because desire is accompanied by agitation. Thus, the ordinary search for happiness is equivalent to inducing suffering and then looking for a way to momentarily alleviate it. Here, happiness is equivalent to the quenching of suffering. The more one induces the suffering, the greater the happiness when this suffering abates. Generally speaking, the time that elapsed during the onset of desire, the subsequent lack and agitation, and the period of unfulfilled gratification is long, whereas the time of gratification and alleviation is fleeting. The life of human beings, which is a mixture of pleasure and pain, is that full of suffering and nourished by hope. What is of graver concern is that there are many desires which remain unfulfilled and for which there is no hope of fulfillment. There's thus a chronic and deepening suffering. When people grow impatient and when they feel hopeless, many of them will struggle in every way possible. If their suffering is not alleviated, they often vent this suffering outwards, creating greater problems for themselves and others. The matter doesn't end here. When people desire and act in order to fulfill this desire, they encounter obstacles, and in relation to others who have similar desires, they face competition. A life of desire necessary in irritation, anger, resentment, persecution, oppression, and distress, and is beset by problems stemming from such anger and oppression. The greater and more frequently one desires, the greater and more frequent is one's irritation and affliction. Please note here that desire here refers to the desire of craving. If one possesses wholesome desires, chanda, obstacles may even turn out to be fun. Worse than this, when one habitually entrusts one's happiness to desire and its gratification, later on, when one sees nothing worthy or desire or desirable objects lose their appeal, and one is not actively searching for gratification, one is left feeling bored, apathetic, and disillusioned. Life becomes insufferable and meaningless. This is another form of suffering, but one which is insipid and wearisome. It may even be more discomforting than the suffering of waiting for sensual gratification. When people take refuge in desire and in pleasurable objects, entrust their happiness to gratification of desires, and create elaborate ways to fulfill desires, their suffering thus becomes more refined and complex. Such is a course of life based on suffering. There's an alternative way of life which is completely free from these problems mentioned above. Here, a person truly lives in the present moment. One is aware of and fully awake to the things previously experienced. One knows and understands those things which must be engaged with in the present moment, and one deals with them accordingly. There's a way of living with mindfulness and clear comprehension, sati sampajanya, or with mindfulness and wisdom, sati panya. In line with the teaching on the four foundations of mindfulness described earlier, here, mindfulness keeps pace with the present moment. One lives in the present. A person who follows this way of life is truly alive. Many people are not truly alive because they either live in the past or in the future. When one lives fully in the moment, there's no sense of lack or deprivation, and there's an absence of stress from the constrictions and strains of desire. One experiences sense impressions in a full and complete way, and thus there's satisfaction in each moment. One doesn't rely on the happiness resulting from temporary gratification of desire and the alleviation of suffering. No suffering arises which must be brought to an end. There's a life free from suffering, an inherent happiness existing at all times. From a life based on suffering, one lives a life based on an absence of suffering, a life based on happiness. When one's life is based on an absence of suffering, if one wishes to experience a form of happiness that is within the limits of one's ability, one can enjoy this happiness to the fullest. Even if one occasionally seeks pleasure through the fulfillment of desire, it is not a problem, despite at the time there's being a lack of gratification, because the later happiness of non-suffering prevails and acts as a surety. Moreover, due to the absence of conditions giving rise to suffering and hindering the mind, such persons are ready to effectively solve problems externally, either those of an individual or of society, to the utmost of their ability. Technically speaking, the material in preceding paragraph is a definition for cessation of suffering, nirodha. A correct definition of this term is not to bring about the state in which there is no suffering that must be extinguished. That is, to bring about a freedom from suffering. This term doesn't merely refer to eliminating already arisen suffering. This corresponds to the appendix in chapter 4 discussing the difficulties in translating this term. The meaning of nirodha in early texts is non-arising of suffering, not a cessation of already arisen suffering. Momentary awareness is essential for insight meditation. People's most ordinary mundane activity, one that is going on constantly in their daily lives, is the cognition of sense impressions through the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind. Cognition is always accompanied by a feeling, either of pleasure, pain, or a neutral feeling. In response to feelings, the mind reacts. If the object is pleasant, there arises desire and delight. If the object is unpleasant or painful, there arises annoyance and aversion. When there's liking of something, one wishes to experience more of it, to repeat the enjoyment, to obtain or possess the object. When there's dislike of something, one wishes to escape from it, to rid oneself of it or destroy it. This process is continuing all the time, both on subtle levels which tend to remain unobserved, and on occasion with an intensity which is plainly recognizable and which inflicts clearly indiscernible and lasting effects on the mind. These powerful or unsettling experiences tend to generate long and involved mental proliferations, and if they are not resolved, they intrude into the whole range of one's speech and action. People's lives, their roles in society, and their interactions with others issue primarily from this incessant contact with sense impressions, which is present in every moment of human existence. Heedlessly abandon the mind to the process of delighting in pleasure and comfort, and resisting pain and discomfort impedes the development of wisdom. One will be prevented from discerning the true nature of things. A lack of restraint in this matter creates the following obstacles. The mind falls under the sway of liking and disliking, and it gets stuck at these points of reaction. One's vision is thus obscure, and one sees things from a biased perspective, not according to how they truly are. The mind falls into the past or drifts into the future. When one experiences a sense impression and either delight or aversion arises, the mind gets stuck at the point or feature of that object that is considered agreeable or disagreeable. One then makes a mental image of these agreeable or disagreeable features, nourish it, and proliferates over it, dwelling on particular agreeable or disagreeable aspects of something, and clinging to concepts or images of it, is equivalent to slipping into the past. This ensuring mental proliferations over these images entail drifting off into the future. A person's understanding of the object, the mind created images based on likes and dislikes, or the embellished ideas about it, is in fact not a true understanding of the object as it truly exists in the present moment. The mind is subject to proliferate thinking, which interprets the meaning of what is sensed or experienced in the light of one's personal history or ingrained habits, e.g., according to one's cherished views, values, and opinions. The mind is at the mercy of these proliferations. It is unable to see things objectively and purely as they are. The mind adds embellished mental images of new experiences to one's pre-existing mental biases and habits, thus compounding one's habitual patterns of reaction. The negative characteristics of mind mentioned above do not pertain only to the coarse and shallow matters of one's daily life and general affairs. The Buddhist teachings emphasize their manifestation at the subtle and profound level of mental continuum. It is through their presence that ordinary, unawakened beings are led to see things as stable and substantially real, to perceive inherent beauty or ugliness in them, to attach to conventional truths, and to overlook the all-encompassing law of causality. People accumulate habits and conditioned tendencies of misperceiving existence almost from the day they are born, and go 20 or 30 years, 40 or 50 years, even longer than that, without ever training themselves to break the cycle of wrong thinking. Dealing with and rectifying this situation is thus not easy. At the very moment that one becomes conscious of an object, before one has had time to steady oneself to check the process, the mind has already switched into an habitual response. The remedy in this case is not simply a matter of cutting a cycle of reactivity and abrogating a conditioned process, but also necessitates curbing the habitual tendencies and dispositions of the mind that flow strongly along fixed channels. Mindfulness is an essential factor here for clearing the way and for marshalling other spiritual factors. The practice of the four foundations of mindfulness has the following objects. Through mindfully keeping pace with experience and seeing things in their bare actuality, they break the circuits of diluted thought, destroy unwholesome mental dynamics, modifies old conditioning, and cultivate new dispositions in the mind. A mind possessing such moment-to-moment awareness is endowed with characteristics which are the complete antithesis of those shown by a mind caught up in the flow of unwholesome condition. Attachment and aversion have no opportunity to arise in the mind, because their presence is dependent on the mind seizing on and lingering over a particular point or aspect of an object, and thus being caught up in the past. Attachment and aversion exist when there is a falling away from the present moment, a consequence of a free, unentangled mind which observes things as they arise from moment to moment, is that it doesn't slip into the past or drift off into the future. The mind is not object to mental proliferations based on past conditioning, which is lead to a biased, distorted, and color experience of phenomena. The mind is prepared to see things as they truly are. The mind doesn't compile or intensify bad habits. When one pays attention to phenomena as they arise in each moment, one perceives certain character traits in oneself which are unwelcome or unacknowledged. With mindfulness, one can face up to these qualities as they are, without seeking to avoid them and without any self-deception. One is thus able to cleanse such impurities from the mind and to solve personal difficulties. The mind endowed with constant mindfulness is unconstricted and untarnished. It is pure, radiant, spacious, joyous, and free. All things exist and proceed accordingly to their own nature. Figuratively speaking, the truth is revealing itself at all times. yet people tend to shut themselves off from it. Alternatively, they see things in a distorted manner or deceive themselves as to the nature of truth altogether. This cause for this concealment, distortion, and deception is the immersion in the conditioned stream of heedless abandon to pleasure and discomfort detailed above. The factors for distortion and delusion are strong in themselves. Add to this the compulsive and misleading power of habit, and the chance to really know the truth is almost non-existent, because personal habits and dispositions have been accumulated steadily over an extremely long period of time. The practice to remedy them and to create a new mode of relating to the world is also likely to require a long time. Whenever mindfulness is consistent and proficient, when one doesn't evade the truth, doesn't distort the things one sees, and escapes the power of old conditioning, one is prepared to see things as they are and to understand the truth. At this point, if other spiritual faculties, especially wisdom, are well developed, they will join force with mindfulness by relying on it to operate in the most effective way, giving rise to knowledge and vision, jnana-darsana, which is the goal of insight meditation. To gain mastery in wisdom and in other spiritual faculties, however, depends on gradual training and on basic study. Study and recent analysis, therefore, are supportive for the realization of truth. Four foundations of mindfulness way of practice. The constituent factors in the practice of the four foundations of mindfulness are twofold: the passive, that which is focused on observe, discern, and the active, the act of observing, paying attention, insight. The passive constituent are those ordinary, mundane things common to all of us, the body and its movements, thoughts, feelings, etc., which exist or manifest in the present moment of awareness. The active constituents are mindfulness, sati, and clear comprehension, sampajanya, which are the principal factors in the practice of the four foundations of mindfulness. These two agents focus on and observe those things present in the mind, unfalteringly and free from distraction. Mindfulness, sati, is that which keeps hold of the chosen object. Clear comprehension, sampajanya, is the wisdom faculty which clearly discerns the nature and purpose of the object under investigation. For example, while walking, one is mindful of and fully present with the movements of the body, and simultaneously one knows clearly the reason for walking, the intended destination, and the factors related to walking. Moreover, clear comprehension understands the object or the action as it is, without coating it with preferences and aversions. There's a matter of linguistics here that needs to be addressed. Some people misconstrue the common definition of sati as recollection and the definition of sampajanya as self-awareness, leading to misguided practice. They establish mindfulness on the sense of self and then have the impression that they are the agents for various actions, thinking, I am doing this, I am doing that. As a result, they create and reinforce the concepts of self. They become preoccupied with this self-image and develop a rigidity of mind. At the very least, their minds are not truly focused on the activity and their efforts do not come to fruition. Someone prone to such misunderstanding should recall the definition of sati as bearing in mind, sustaining attention on the object or task at hand, and sustaining attention on the flow of events. Similarly, one should recall the definition of sampajanya as clear comprehension of an object of attention or clear comprehension of one's current activity. In other words, this is not a matter of focusing on the sense of self, quote, I am doing this, Rather than focusing on the performer of the task, one focuses on the task itself. One's attention is so present and focus that eventually there is no opportunity for a sense of self to interfere in the process. The essential feature of mindfulness is an accurate, undistorted perception of things. One sees and understands what the object of awareness is, how it manifests, and what effects it has in each moment. It entails a constant acknowledging, observing, contemplating, and understanding. One doesn't react to the object, evaluate it, criticizing it, or judge it as being good or bad, right or wrong, etc. One doesn't paste one's emotions, biases, or attachments onto the object, say as being agreeable or disagreeable, satisfactory or unacceptable. One merely discerns how that object, condition, or quality actually is, without supplementing one's perception with such thoughts as my, his, us, them, Mr. Crabtree, Mrs. Simpkins, etc. Take the example of mindfulness of feeling, Vedana. In this very moment, one knows, for instance, that mental discomfort exists. One knows that it is arisen. One knows the way in which it came about, and one knows how it is gradually dissipating. Similarly, one is mindful of my objects, Dhammaramana. If worry or anxiety arises, one observes such emotions and contemplates how they have come about and how they unfold. If anger arises, the very awareness of this anger leads to its dissipation. One then reflects on the past anger, contemplating its advantages, its ill effects, its cause, and its ending. Eventually, it can become enjoyable to study, reflect on, and investigate one's own suffering. When it is pure, unadulterated suffering arising and passing away, and there is no trace of quote-unquote my suffering or I'm suffering, then that suffering is robbed of all its power to harm the one who contemplates it. Whenever form of virtue or vice exists externally or is present in the mind, one faces up to it without any evasion or avoidance. One pays close attention to it from the moment of its arising until it reaches its natural end. It is similar to watching actors perform a play or to being a bystander at some event. This is an attitude comparable to that of a doctor performing an autopsy or that of a scientist analyzing a subject of research rather than that of a judge setting a case between plaintiff and defendant. This is an objective rather than a subjective approach. The constant application of mindfulness and clear comprehension implies living in the present moment. One is aware in each moment of what is arising, what is happening, and what one is doing. Attention does not slip. One doesn't attach to or linger over past events, and one doesn't drift off into the future in search of things that do not yet exist. If some unsolved matter from the past or some future obligation should be considered, mindfulness lays hold of the relevant details and wisdom faculty reflects on them in a purposeful way, so that these matters become the present objects of awareness. One doesn't get caught up in aimless thought, nostalgic reminiscence, or fantasies of the future. By dwelling in the present moment, one is not enslaved, seduced, or driven by craving. One lives wisely, free from various forms of suffering, such as grief, regret, worry, and depression. This way of life leads to an awareness accompanied by spaciousness, clarity, and ease. First of mindfulness practice, purity. When mindfulness is focused on a chosen object and when clear comprehension understands that thing in its true light, then the stream of cognition and thought is purified, for there will be no room for mental defilements to arise. When one discerns phenomena simply as they are, without coloring the experience by emotions or reacting from personal prejudice and preferences, there is no clinging. This is a way to eliminate existing mental taints, asava, and to prevent newly founded taints from arising. Freedom. When the mind is purified as described above, it is also liberated. It is not shaken or disturbed by sense impressions, because they are used as food for contemplation in a purely objective way. When these things are not misinterpreted by subjective mental taints, they have no power over people, and one's behavior is free from the controlling influence of unconscious drives and motivations. This is what is referred to by the passage, one abides independently, not clinging to anything in the world. This is from the Satipatthana Sutta. Wisdom. When this mind is thus purified and liberated, wisdom functions most effectively because the mind is not coated over or detracted by emotions, prejudice, and biases. One then sees things as they are according to the truth. Freedom from suffering. When this state of vigilance and true understanding of things as sustained, prejudicial responses, either in a negative or a positive sense, which doesn't accord with pure reason discernment, cannot arise. There are no feelings of covetousness, abhisha, or resentment, domanassa, and there is a liberation from all forms of anxiety. This is called freedom from suffering, which is marked by unbounded clarity, ease, peace, and contentment. Indeed, these four fruits of practice are interrelated, and they are aspects of the same thing. From the perspective of the teachings on dependent origination, paticca and on the three characteristics, tilakkhana, one can conclude the following. At first, most people are ignorant of the fact that the so-called self they cling to it's ultimately non-existent. People exist merely as a continuum of myriad interrelated and interdependent physical and mental phenomena, which continually arise, transform, and disperse. When one is unaware of this truth, one clings to emotions, thoughts, desires, habits, opinions, beliefs, perceptions, etc. in any one moment, and one identifies with these. The resulting sense of self undergoes a constant transformation. One thinks, I was that, now I am this. I felt that way, now I feel this way. To engage in such self-identification is to be deceived by such things as thoughts and feelings, which are merely subsidiary mental factors, nama-dhamma, active in that particular moment. This deceptions is the source of wrong thinking. As a consequence, one's thoughts, feelings, and actions are motivated and driven by the exigencies of whatever is being clung to as self at the moment. When one practices in the line with the foundations of mindfulness, one sees each material and mental component within a specific process as arising and ceasing according to its own nature. By analyzing and distinguishing each factor of this moment-to-moment continuum, one is not deceived into grasping onto things and identifying with them as self. These things thus lose their power of coercion. If this insight attains an optimum profundity and clarity, one realizes liberation. The mind is established in a new mode of being, which is pure, spacious, free from mental biases and attachment. Even one's personality is altered. It is a state of perfect mental health. It is comparable to a body which is in perfect health, When, in the absence of disease, all of its organs function smoothly and normally. Indeed, the practice of four foundations of mindfulness is a method of cleansing the mind of mental illness, of completely eliminating those things that restrict, obstruct, and impede the mind. A person is then prepared to face and deal with all things in the world resolutely and with joy. This matter may be summarized with the following teaching of the Buddha, and this comes from Anguttara Nikaya, Book of Two, Sutta 143. Monks, there are two kinds of illness, physical illness and mental illness. There are to be seen beings who can assert to be without illness of the body for an entire year. There are to be seen beings who can assert to be without illness of the body for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, 100 years. But beings who can assert to be without illness of the mind, even for an instant, are difficult to find in the world, with the exception of those who are free from the taints. And the next sutta is Samyutta Nikaya, Book of 3, Sutta number 2. Venerable Sariputta is talking with Nakulapita. Venerable Sariputta, householder, your faculties are bright, your facial complexion is pure and radiant. Did you get to hear a Dhamma talk today in the presence of the Blessed One? Nakulapita, why not, Venerable Sir? Just now I was anointed by the Blessed One with an ambrosia of a Dhamma talk. Venerable Sariputta, in what manner did the Blessed One anoint you with the ambrosia of a Dhamma talk? Nakulapita, here, Venerable Sir, I approached the Blessed One, pay homage to him, sat down to one side and said to him, I am old, Venerable Sir, aged, burdened with years, advanced in life, afflicted in body, often ill. I rarely get to see the Blessed One and the bhikkhus who are a cause for delight. Let the Blessed One exhort me, Venerable Sir. Let him instruct me, since that will lead to my welfare and happiness for a long life. And the Buddha replied, so it is, householder, so it is. The body is afflicted, like an egg which is covered by a shell. If anyone carrying around this body were to claim to be without illness even for a moment, what would this be other than foolishness? Therefore, householder, you should train yourself thus. Even though I am afflicted in body, my mind will be unafflicted. This was with the ambrosia of such a Dhamma talk, Venerable Sir, that the Blessed One anointed me. So that's the end of my readings today.
Thank you for the reading. I heard a really big emphasis on staying in the present moment and being able to see things as they are. And there's been other readings where there's like an encouragement to gladden the mind, for example, or like practice metta or like practice wholesome states of mind. And I wonder how that fits into this practice of being present and seeing things as they are.
It fits into the aspect of training, so that the path that the Buddha lays out is a path of training, and it is, the word that the Buddha uses is sikha, and say somebody who is an arahant is somebody who is beyond training. So until we're arahants, then we've got to train in different ways, and so that and in the training, then you have to pay attention to what is it that is helping the mind be clear, to be steady, to be astute to the nature of the experience that we're facing, and astute to the experiencer. And so that mindfulness is critical, foundational, and then sometimes we need to support the mind to be. It's like Ajahn Chah giving the image. It was actually Jack Cornfield who was criticized, was confused by Ajahn Chah. I don't understand. Sometimes you teach people to do this, and sometimes you teach people to do that, and sometimes you're telling people to relax. Sometimes you're telling people to be diligent. I don't understand what I should be doing. And Ajahn Chah just said, well, really, all I'm doing is I'm seeing watching people as if I'm seeing somebody walking along a road and they're going off into a ditch on the left-hand side of the road, and I'll say, go right, go right. And then I see somebody going off into a ditch in the right-hand side, and I'll say, go left, go left. I'm just trying to get people to be balanced and trying to give people the encouragement to be in a place of clarity. So that similarly, the Buddha puts mindfulness front and center, but sometimes we need to have supports of the mind that allow it to be more balanced or more centered, more steady. And so then aspects of loving kindness are one, gladdening the mind in different ways with faith or devotion, bringing up a sense of urgency by contemplating death, contemplating the unattractive nature of the body. These are all sort of helpful tools that support the mindfulness from time to time.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah. Just to add one comment on that is that, if one is mindful of what's happening in the present moment, and what's happening in the present moment is an unskillful mind state, then one can choose to do something like Lumpua just said, of being active, the need to, say, gladden the mind from your example. But while one is gladdening the mind, it doesn't mean you stop being mindful of what's happening in the present moment. So you can still be mindful of exactly what's happening right here, right now, while you're also taking an active approach to gladdening the mind.
I think, this notion of seeing things as they are, I feel like is where I'm getting a bit confused, especially with what you're saying, Ajahn Karuna-Dhammo, about being active to change the situation in the present moment for the better, but we're not leaving things as they are then, right?
Yeah, being aware of the way things are in any one moment doesn't mean that that's all you do. Yeah, you don't. If the way things are in the present moment is unskillful, and you're, engaging in unskillful mental habits and unwise attention, then you don't just sit there and let it all happen. It's that's the whole process of mindfulness, is using discernment as well, clear awareness and discernment, so that you're not just passively letting unskillful mind states persist and proliferate. So you're actually using that mindful awareness of what's happening right here and right now to choose to be, use skillful attention to create wholesome states of mind. That's the whole purpose.
That was very helpful.
Yeah. Also, sometimes. When the Buddha teaches, one of the things he actually said, describing his own teaching, he calls it, this is Avirya Vada, like Vada is a teaching, a teaching. And virya, of course, is effort. This is a teaching of effort. It's not a teaching of non-action. Because there were teachings at the time of the Buddha that were of non-action, that said any action is going to be counterproductive because we're all under this, we're all, everything is determined by fate. And the Buddha is saying, no, we're not determined by fate. We have agency, and we have to put forth effort. So so one of the, say, bases of what is the appropriate effort to apply has to be grounded in mindfulness that sees things as they truly are. So you can make a clear discernment as to where do I put my effort, my action.